Deshaun Watson is throwing interceptions. He's throwing interceptions. This is courtesy of ESPN Cleveland. Denzel Ward, the newly paid man, picking him off. That was behind him. That was behind him, Deshaun. You threw that ball behind him. You got picked off. Look, you supposed to have that ball outside. You left the ball hanging on the inside and you got picked off. All right, you see it. You see it with your own two eyes. Deshaun Watson.
Day one, not a preseason game, not a playoff moment, not a high-pressure regular season matchup. Day one of training camp, and Deshaun Watson already threw an interception. Not a tipped ball, not a miscommunication. He threw it behind his receiver, left it hanging on the inside, and Denzel Ward, the man Cleveland just paid like one of the best corners in this league, stepped right in front of it and walked away with it like it was gift wrapped. And here is the part that makes that even harder to ignore. At the exact same practice, on the exact same field, in front of the exact same coaching staff, Shedeur Sanders was out there connecting with Denzel Boston and moving the chains. Same day, same field, two completely different stories being written at the same time. And then Todd Monken walked up to that podium and said something that changes the entire picture of this quarterback competition. Something that every Browns fan, every Shedeur supporter, and every Watson believer needs to hear word for word. Before we go any further, drop one word in the comments right now. Watson or Shedeur? One word. Let us see where Gridiron Ground stands on this. Stay locked in. This breakdown goes places the mainstream coverage is not touching.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
We just pick up alternating at this point?
Yeah, nothing's really changed. We anticipate alternating. First of all 4 quarterbacks are going to compete. They all won't get equal reps. Obviously, we will alternate just like we did in the spring, Deshaun and Shedeur with the ones.
Do you have a timeline on when you want to name a quarterback one, and how do you plan on getting enough reps for the preseason game?
The easiest way for me to say that, and it still won't stop you from asking, not you particularly, but everybody in general, is the first game. And we're going to have a starter the first game, right? I mean, ultimately, I'm not going to decide who the starter is. They decide by their play. Their play decides who the starter is. I don't have any preconceived notions of how they played in the past or how they're going to play. I only can, with my eyes, judge. And guys got to play well around them. I think we've shored up some things up front. We've added some weapons on the perimeter, so I think that's going to help.
There's a reason day one of training camp carries so much weight. It is the first real moment where the offseason talk stops and the football starts. No more projections, no more rankings, no more analysts debating hypotheticals from a studio. The pads go on, the coaches watch, and the field starts telling the story that the rest of camp is going to follow. And on day one of Browns training camp, that story started in a way that nobody in the Cleveland organization scripted. Deshaun Watson drops back. He goes through his read. He decides where the ball is going, and then he throws it. But the ball does not go where it needed to go. It sails behind the receiver. The placement is wrong. The ball hangs on the inside when it needed to be placed on the outside, and Denzel Ward does exactly what elite cornerbacks do when quarterbacks make mistakes. He reads it, he breaks on it, and he takes it away. Now let us be clear about who Denzel Ward is, because the name matters here. This is not a practice squad corner trying to earn a roster spot. This is a cornerback who just signed a significant contract extension because the Cleveland Browns believe he is one of the better corners in this league. He is a professional. He is experienced. And he made that interception look routine because the throw made it routine for him. Watson did not put the ball in a spot where Ward had to work. He put it in a spot where Ward could just go get it. That is the part that stings. Not just that it was intercepted, but how easy the interception was. There was no great play by the defense. There was a bad decision and a bad placement by the offense, and the defense simply did its job. But the story of day one is not just about what Watson did wrong. It is equally about what Shedeur Sanders did right at the exact same practice. While Watson was handing the defense a momentum moment, Shedeur was out there building one for the offense. He found Boston. He made the connection. He moved the chains. And he did it in front of the same coaching staff that watched Watson gift wrap that interception to the defense minutes earlier, or maybe moments before or after, depending on the rep rotation.
Way back to the owners' meetings, the breakfast, you noted that you would not be able to do equal reps, obviously, for these guys. So, in terms of the reps, will you sort of start to maybe trend towards your presumptive starter? All of a sudden, we'll look out there and start to see one guy maybe taking more first-team reps?
It's possible, but I don't decide that. The players will decide that. As you start to see, as the camp goes, and you start to see less rotation, you start to see individual players at every position.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
You had two quarterbacks on the same field, at the same practice, performing at the same time, and they could not have looked more different from each other. One was giving the defense reasons to feel good about themselves. The other was giving the offense reasons to believe in what is possible. One was reinforcing the concerns that have been building around his game all offseason. The other was answering every critic who said he was not ready for this moment. And the coaching staff saw all of it. Every rep, every throw, every decision. Todd Monken and his staff were on that field watching every single thing that happened, and none of it disappears. It all goes into the evaluation. It all feeds the decision that is coming at the end of this training camp process. Here is what makes day one matter beyond just the optics. It sets a tone. It establishes a baseline. When coaches and players look back at this training camp 6 weeks from now, day one is going to be the reference point. And right now, the reference point says Watson threw a pick and Shedeur made plays. That is the foundation this competition is being built on. And the field was just getting started talking. One interception does not end a quarterback competition. Let us establish that clearly and honestly right from the start of this section, because the goal here is not to bury Watson over a single camp rep. The goal is to look at the full picture and understand what it actually means when you place that interception in the proper context. And the proper context is what makes it significant in a way that goes beyond just the play itself. The questions around Deshaun Watson did not start on day one of training camp. They have been building for a long time. There have been concerns about his arm strength, about his ability to process information at the speed the modern NFL demands, about whether the Watson who was one of the most electric quarterbacks in the league before everything that disrupted his career is genuinely still in there and capable of returning to that level. Those are not new questions. Those are questions that carried all the way through the offseason and into the first day of camp. And day one of camp did not answer those questions in the direction Watson needed them answered. Instead of coming out on day one and making a throw that silenced the doubters, a throw that made everyone in that organization exhale and say, okay, Watson is back. He threw a pick. He misread the coverage or misjudged the placement, left the ball in the wrong spot, and gave the defense an easy win on the very first competitive day of the season. Now flip that over and look at what Shedeur Sanders has been carrying into this situation. The doubts around Shedeur were different but equally loud. People said his college production was a system product. They said Deshaun Sanders built Colorado around making his son look good, and that the moment Shedeur got to an NFL environment where he could not rely on that infrastructure, the production would drop off. They said he fell in the draft for a reason, and that reason was going to become obvious once real NFL evaluation started. And day one of real NFL evaluation started, and Shedeur connected with Boston and made plays. The same field that exposed Watson's mistake rewarded Shedeur's execution. Those two things happening simultaneously on the same day is not something you can dismiss as coincidence or noise. That is the field speaking. That is the competition producing real information in real time. Here is the thing about training camp that casual fans sometimes underestimate. The coaching staff is not just watching the highlight plays. They are watching tendencies. They are watching decision-making patterns. They are watching how a quarterback handles pressure, how he goes through his progressions, how he manages the moment when the defense takes something away. All of that information is being absorbed and cataloged on every single rep, every single day. And on day one, the tendencies looked very different between these two quarterbacks. Shedeur looked composed. He looked like someone who belongs in that competition, who is not overwhelmed by the moment, who is making reads and delivering the ball with the kind of confidence and accuracy that coaches want to see from a starting quarterback. Watson looked like someone who is still searching for something that used to come naturally to him. That is not a final verdict. Camp is long and situations change, but the field is already communicating something clear, and the coaching staff is fluent in that language. What Monken said when he stepped to the podium made the picture even sharper. When a head coach holds his first press conference of training camp, the words matter on multiple levels. They matter to the fans who are trying to understand what the organization is thinking. They matter to the media who are trying to frame the story of the season. And they matter to the players in that locker room who are listening carefully to every phrase their head coach uses, because those phrases carry signals about how decisions are going to be made. Todd Monken knows all of this. And what he said on day one of Brown's camp at that podium was not accidental, and it was not vague. A reporter asked him directly about the timeline for naming a starter and how he plans to manage rep distribution through the preseason. Monken did not give the typical non-answer. He did not hide behind process language or deflect with something generic about wanting to see how things develop. He was specific. He was direct. And what he said carries enormous implications for where this competition is headed. He said, and these are his words, that he is not going to decide who the starter is. He said the players decide by their play. He said their play decides who the starter is. And then he went further. He said he does not have any preconceived notions about how they have played in the past or how they are going to play. He said the only tool he is using to evaluate this competition is his own eyes watching what happens on the field. Take a moment with that statement, because what Monken just did is publicly eliminate every external factor that people have been pointing to as reasons why this competition might not be real. The contract does not decide. The history does not decide. The investment does not decide. The play decides. And the judge is a head coach who said he has no preconceived notions about either quarterback going into this thing. That single statement is the most important thing said about the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation all offseason, because it removes every excuse, every explanation, and every political cover story that people have been building around the idea that Watson was always going to get the job regardless of what happened in camp. Monken just stood at a podium and said that is not how this works. The play decides. He also added something that deserves its own spotlight because it directly addresses one of the most common arguments used against giving Shedeur a real shot. Monken talked about the supporting cast. He said the Browns have shored up things up front and added weapons on the perimeter. He said those improvements are going to help whoever is under center. That matters enormously because the most persistent knock on Shedeur coming into this situation was that evaluating him fairly was difficult because the supporting cast was not strong enough. Monken just took that excuse off the table. He is saying the weapons are there. The protection is better. The conditions are set up for a quarterback to succeed. Now it comes down to the quarterback. And then Monken said something else at that press conference. Something specific about the rep distribution and what it signals when one quarterback starts trending toward more first team work. And this part of what he said is the closest thing to a roadmap for how this competition ends that you are going to find anywhere. Most head coaches in this league are masters of saying a lot of words without actually telling you anything meaningful. They have spent careers perfecting the art of the non-answer, the vague response that sounds substantive but reveals nothing about how decisions are actually going to be made. Todd Monken did something different on day one of Brown's camp. Whether he fully realized it or not, he handed every person paying attention to this competition a precise and trackable formula for how it ends. And once you understand that formula, watching this training camp becomes a completely different experience. A reporter pressed Monken specifically on the rep distribution. The question was direct. As camp progresses, will we start to see one quarterback trending toward more first-team reps? Will there be a visible shift that signals who the coaching staff is leaning toward? And Monken's answer was not a deflection. He said it is possible. He said the players decide that. And then he said the key line.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
He said as camp goes on, and you start to see less rotation. If you start to see individual players at every position getting more reps with the ones, that is a pretty good sign they are the one. He literally just told you the scoreboard. He handed you the answer key to this entire competition. You do not need to wait for a formal announcement. You do not need a press release or a big speech from the podium. All you need to do is watch the reps. Watch who is consistently lining up with the first team offense as camp progresses. When the rotation starts to tighten and one quarterback is getting the majority of those one's reps, the decision has already been made. Monken just told you to watch for it. He also laid out his ideal camp structure in terms of how he would distribute reps across the depth chart in a perfect world. He said he would want the first team getting 50% of the reps, the second team getting 33%, and the third team getting 17%. That is a clear hierarchy. And right now Watson and Shedeur are both sitting at the top of that hierarchy, splitting the first team reps alternately just like they did in the spring. But hierarchies shift. Depth charts are not permanent structures. They move based on what the coaches see, and the coaches see everything. Now apply that formula to what we already saw on day one. Watson threw an interception. Shedeur made plays. If day 2 looks similar and day 3 continues in the same direction, the math on the rep distribution starts to become very interesting very quickly. Because Monken told you the reps follow the performance. He said the players decide when the shift happens by how they play. So the question is not whether the reps will shift. The question is how many days of this pattern need to play out before they do. This rep distribution roadmap also matters for understanding the full picture of this competition, beyond just the Watson and Shedeur storyline. Monken mentioned the other quarterbacks on the roster, noting that everyone competes and that injuries are part of camp. But the reality is that the formula he described points clearly toward a two-man race, where the reps at the top are going to consolidate around whichever quarterback earns them through performance. The scoreboard is set. The formula is public. And right now, based on everything day 1 showed, Shedeur Sanders is winning on the metric that the head coach himself said decides everything. But there is a battle happening here that is bigger than rep counts and press conference quotes. Strip away the contract debates and the rep distribution discussions and the press conference quotes, and you find something underneath all of it that rarely gets talked about directly in the mainstream coverage of this story. Shedeur Sanders is not just competing against Deshaun Watson for a starting job. He is competing against something much harder to beat than a veteran quarterback with a big contract. He is competing against a narrative that was constructed around him before he ever took a single professional snap, a narrative built by people who had already decided the answer before they asked the question. Think back to how the pre-draft conversation around Shedeur was framed. The skepticism was not quiet or subtle. There were analysts, commentators, and media personalities who were vocal and consistent about their doubts. The argument was not just that Shedeur might need development time, which would be a reasonable and fair position for any rookie. The argument was often more pointed than that. That his numbers at Colorado were a reflection of the system his father constructed around him, rather than his own ability. That the moment he stepped into an NFL environment where the infrastructure was not built specifically to make him look good, the production would fall away and the critics would be proven right. And then the draft happened, and the way it happened gave those critics a moment they used loudly. Shedeur fell further than almost any projection had him going, and rather than that fall being treated as a potential organizational mistake by the teams that passed on him, it was treated by some as confirmation of what they already believed. He fell because the league evaluated him and agreed with the doubters. That was the narrative. That was the story being told. But narratives built before the competition starts do not survive contact with the field. And that is exactly what is happening right now in Berea. Day one of real football, and Shedeur Sanders is making plays while the quarterback, who was supposed to be the obvious answer, is throwing interceptions. The field is not cooperating with the story the doubters wrote. Here is something worth understanding about the ecosystem that exists around a story like this. There are people who built genuine credibility and genuine takes on the idea that Shedeur was not going to succeed at this level. Analysts who ranked him low in their draft boards. Media personalities who questioned his readiness publicly and repeatedly. If Shedeur wins this starting job and goes out and performs the way the early camp evidence suggests he is capable of performing, a lot of people have to publicly reckon with being wrong. And in the media landscape, being wrong in a loud and public way about something this big is costly, which means there is an invisible pressure in the way this story gets covered that is subtly rooting against Shedeur doing what he is doing right now. The field does not care about any of that. The field does not read draft grades or watch studio shows or track analyst credibility. The field only measures one thing, and that is what happens when the ball is snapped. And on day one, what happened was Shedeur Sanders performed and Watson did not.
Before going further, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. It really helps us keep bringing you the content you love. Share this video with your friends so they don't miss out on all the drama and excitement.
Every clean rep Shedeur takes with the first team is another piece of evidence that dismantles the narrative. Every accurate throw, every correct read, every ball delivered to the right spot at the right time is a direct answer to everyone who said he could not do it at this level. But for all of that to matter, the head coach needs to actually have the authority to make the call. And that question deserves a direct answer. This is the question that surfaces in every comment section and every fan forum every time someone brings up the possibility of Shedeur Sanders winning this starting job. And it is not a paranoid question. It is grounded in a real understanding of how professional sports organizations sometimes operate when business decisions and football decisions point in different directions. So let us address it directly and honestly, because Browns fans deserve a real answer rather than a dismissive one. The concern goes like this. Deshaun Watson has one of the most expensive and structurally complicated contracts in the history of the NFL. The Cleveland Browns made a franchise-level commitment to him when they traded significant draft capital to acquire him, and then signed him to that deal. The financial and reputational stakes of that commitment are enormous. And the worry is that no matter what happens on the practice field, no matter how well Shedeur performs or how poorly Watson plays, the front office pressure to protect that investment is going to be too heavy for a first-year head coach to push back against. That the competition is going to be quietly managed toward the predetermined conclusion that Watson keeps the job. It is a fair concern. There is precedent around the league for exactly that kind of situation playing out. Organizations protecting financial decisions at the expense of football decisions is not some theoretical possibility. It is something fans have watched happen before. But here is why this situation has a different set of dynamics. And here is why Todd Monken's position specifically makes the front office override scenario less likely than it might appear on the surface. Monken is a first-year head coach. This training camp is his first as the man in charge of an NFL franchise. He called it a dream come true, and he clearly means that. His entire future in this league as a head coach, his reputation, his legacy, and his career trajectory are all tied directly to what happens with this team this season. If the Browns struggle, if the quarterback situation becomes a disaster that everyone could see coming from day one of camp, Monken is the one who answers for it. Not the previous regime, not the front office executives who built the Watson contract. Monken. That reality gives Monken a powerful and very personal incentive to make the football decision rather than the political one. Because if he starts Watson based on contract pressure, Watson underperforms, the Browns lose games they could have won with a better performing quarterback. And at some point midseason they are forced into a change anyway. Monken looks like someone who did not have the courage to make the hard call when the evidence was right there in front of him. That is not just a bad look. That is a career-damaging look for a first-year head coach trying to establish himself. On the other hand, if Monken runs the competition fairly, Shedeur wins it through performance, and Shedeur goes out and plays well, Monken becomes the story of the year. He becomes the coach who trusted the process and got rewarded for it. His career gets a foundation it can build on. The incentives point clearly in one direction. His words at the podium pointed in the same direction. And his language about having no preconceived notions and letting the play decide is either completely true, or it is the most self-destructive set of public promises a first-year head coach has ever made. Either way, the preseason is about to make all of this impossible to ignore. Practice reps matter. They are watched carefully, they are evaluated seriously, and the coaches are absorbing information from every single one of them. But there is a ceiling on what practice can tell you that a game environment removes completely. The noise of a real stadium, the complexity of a defense that is scheming against you with real game preparation, the weight of a possession that actually has consequences. Those are conditions that practice simply cannot fully replicate no matter how competitive and intense the camp environment is. And Todd Monken just confirmed that the starters are going to experience all of those conditions in the preseason opener against Chicago. Monken said it directly at the press conference. In the preseason opener, the starters play. He said he is not going to back himself into a corner with specific snap counts, but the intent is clear. The first-team quarterbacks are getting real game reps in a real game, and that single fact changes the entire timeline and stakes of this competition in a way that makes the next several weeks of football genuinely unmissable for anyone following this story. Here is what preseason game reps reveal that practice reps only suggest. In practice, a quarterback can look sharp in a controlled environment where the defense knows certain boundaries and the situation is managed. In a game, none of that protection exists. The defense is scheming. The pressure is real. The decisions happen faster and with higher stakes attached to every one of them, and the tape from that game lives forever. It gets studied, it gets replayed, it gets referenced in every conversation about that quarterback going forward. If Shedeur Sanders gets first-team reps in that preseason opener against Chicago and performs the way he performed on day one of camp, the conversation around this competition reaches a completely different level. Because at that point, you are no longer talking about what happened in practice. You are talking about a quarterback who went into a real game environment against a real NFL defense with the first-team offense and performed. That is not something you dismiss or explain away with context qualifications. That is a data point that sits at the center of every future conversation about this competition. And on the other side, if Watson struggles in a televised preseason game the way he struggled on day one of camp, the tape exists in a way that cannot be managed or contextualized into irrelevance. A preseason interception on national television with the first-team offense is a different animal than a practice interception reported in training camp updates. It becomes part of the permanent record of this competition. This is also where Monken's rep distribution formula becomes urgent in a new way. Because if one quarterback is clearly trending toward more first-team reps as camp progresses, the preseason game becomes less of an open audition and more of a confirmation of what the coaches already know. The direction of the competition will already be visible in the rep counts before the preseason opener even kicks off, and the game itself will either confirm that direction or produce a surprising reversal. Based on everything day one of camp showed, Shedeur is heading into this preseason stretch with momentum, with confidence, and with a coaching staff that has already seen him outperform the competition. On the first day, the competition was real. The preseason is where this story gets its loudest chapter yet. And there is one more truth that Browns fans need to hear before we wrap this up. Let us step all the way back for a moment and look at the full picture of what is happening in Cleveland right now. Because there is a truth sitting in the middle of all of this that deserves to be said plainly without spin, and without the kind of careful framing that a lot of coverage around this situation uses to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. The Cleveland Browns have a decision coming. Not a symbolic one, not a procedural one, not a formality dressed up as a competition. A real decision with real consequences for the franchise, for the fans, and for the direction of this organization for potentially the next decade. And the evidence that is going to inform that decision is already being generated on the practice field in Berea. It started on day one, and day one told a very clear story. Watson threw a pick, Shedeur made plays, one quarterback reinforced the doubts that have been building around him for years. The other answered the doubts that people tried to build around him before he ever played a professional snap. Those are facts, not projections, not opinions, not takes built on draft grades or contract values. Facts from day one of real football. Now here is the part that Browns fans need to sit with honestly. The Cleveland Browns brought Shedeur Sanders into this organization for a reason. He was not drafted to be a depth piece. He was not brought in to be a practice body that Watson looks good against in camp. He was drafted because the organization saw something real in him. Something they believed was worth investing in, worth competing with, worth putting on the same field as a veteran quarterback and letting the best man earn the job. That is not a small thing. Organizations do not make that kind of decision without genuine belief that the player they are bringing in has what it takes. And now that belief is being tested on the field, and the field is answering in Shedeur's direction. Here is what happens if the Browns ignore what the field is telling them. They go into the regular season with a quarterback who showed up to day one of training camp and threw an interception while the guy competing against him was making plays. They go into a season carrying the weight of a decision that the evidence did not support. And when things go wrong, because carrying that kind of weight eventually produces results that reflect the choice, the fans in Cleveland who have been waiting for this franchise to get the quarterback decision right are left holding the cost of an organization choosing politics over performance. That is not a hypothetical. That is a pattern that has burned Cleveland before, and the people in that city deserve better than watching it happen again when the field is literally showing them an alternative in real time. Shedeur Sanders is not asking for the job to be handed to him. He is out there every single day earning it rep by rep, throw by throw, in front of a coaching staff that the head coach himself says is going to let the play decide. All he needs is for the organization to have the courage to honor what the play is saying. Day one said something loud and clear. The rest of camp is going to keep saying it. And at Gridiron Ground, we are going to be here for every single word of it, giving you the truth with the receipts to back it up every single time. Here is where everything lands. Day one of Browns training camp handed you everything you need to understand where this quarterback competition is heading. Watson threw a pick on a ball left behind his receiver. Shedeur Sanders made plays with the first-team offense on the same field at the same practice. Todd Monken walked to that podium and gave you the exact formula to track how this ends. Watch the reps. When the rotation tightens and one quarterback is consistently getting more first-team work, the decision has already been made. That is not speculation. That is what the head coach told you in his own words. The preseason is coming. The starters are playing. The tape is going to exist in a way that cannot be explained away. And right now, the quarterback who is building momentum heading into that moment is Shedeur Sanders. Here is the question I want to leave you with. If Shedeur outperforms Watson through every remaining day of camp and into the preseason, does this organization have the courage to let the field make the call, or does the contract win? Drop your answer below. And if Gridiron Ground is not already in your subscriptions, you are missing the only place where the truth comes with receipts. We will see you in the next one.